Hello everyone. So because mains is approaching, I believe it was due on my part to come up with some themes that UPSC rather keeps repeating year after year when it comes to the ethics GS4 paper. So I just wanted to deal and discuss what are some of those themes that can get asked this year as well, relating them with the current affairs, relating them with some of the papers that UPSC has conducted in the recent times. Let us quickly go through them, and let me quickly give you a mental framework or an approach to deal with these questions as and when they come. So one of the expected themes this year as well from the first topic, which is ethics and human interface, can be about this. From this topic, ethics and human interface, what UPSC can ask again this year is about role of family, society and educational institutions in inculcating values. Now, it may not give you a very direct question when it comes to this topic, but how can it ask this question? Let us see. So, ये दो PYQs हैं that I've picked up to show you how to best use this socialization के aspects वाला जो sub part है in our syllabus. If a country is to be corruption free and become a nation of beautiful minds, I strongly feel there are three key societal members who can make a difference. They are father, the mother and the teacher. This was, as it is, a code-based questions that had come in one of the previous years. Now this you will be able to tell directly कि ये factors of socialization से related question है. See the next question, which is not as direct. Corruption is the manifestation of the failure of core values in society. Now, what most of you will do is take this as the keyword, and you will make this an answer of outrightly corruption, the definition of corruption, and how that is flourishing at the level of civil services, etc., etc. You have to read the question in its entirety and try to figure out what it is trying to ask. Let us read this again. Corruption is the manifestation of the failure of core values in the society. In your opinion, what measures can be adopted to uplift the core values in society? See, any ill in society that is accepted, corruption does not start in the bureaucracy. Corruption starts from the very day our socialization starts. Our first lesson in corruption is not given by some senior bureaucrat, but it is rather our own parents who feel that corruption is an easier way of getting things done. तो यहाँ पे corruption is not just the institutionalized corruption, rather the acceptance of basic ills that just give money and get your things done easily. तो आपको यहाँ पे when you're discussing the measures to uplift the core values in society or the measures to deal with corruption, one or two points here have to discuss role of factors of socialization, which is what is the role that your parents have when it comes to sort of not accepting corruption as a normal thing in society, the role of educational institutions in instilling good civic values in society, and so on and so forth. So when you see question in a silo कि आप सिर्फ इसको एक bureaucratic problem की तरह अगर सोचोगे तो you will not be able to answer this question, the entire essence of this question. But if you see this question as अगर आप इसको whole of a problem के approach से solve करना चाहोगे, only then will you be able to write one or two points around socialization and its role in sort of solving corruption. So this is what I wanted to tell you कि ऐसे questions पहले भी आए हैं. Now when I've discussed this topic in the class as well, I've always discussed this in the context of the internet and how the family values and how the role of family as a factor in socialization, as a factor in value inculcation in a child is changing. So when you're preparing this topic, there is one key theme that I want you to prepare as well, which is the changing role of family and its various agents in inculcating certain values. Internet के आने से how has it changed? So when you write this answer, there are some keywords that I would like to give you here as well. सबसे पहले तो we prepare these things कि earlier sole role of parents was of role modeling, acting as emotional security base to the child, a role in conscience formation. That family will basically decide कि क्या values आप inculcate करना चाहते हैं अपने child में, क्या नहीं करना चाहते हैं. Then role of grandparents was such that they would provide storytelling as pedagogy, etc., etc. I'm not going into the explanation and details as such. I expect that if you're writing this means you have prepared some content or the other, if not this, for this very topic. Now, when you're writing the changing role, सबसे पहले तो changing role में you have to keep two things in mind. The first thing is that if the question is asking you how is the role of family changing with the coming of the internet in the digital age, you have to discuss both the positive and negative changes. Now, of course, when I say I have to mention both positive and negative changes, owing to the tone of the question, I'll decide how much space is to be allocated to the negative end and how much space is to be allocated to the positive end. Now, usually a question might come on this question, जिसमें ज़्यादा space they would want to give to the negative changes. For example, the internet is acting as the third parent, or that influencer, random influencer on the internet acting as the third parent to your child, so on and so forth. जैसे there is erosion in the sense that algorithm is deriving or driving the socialization. You do not have the sole role in terms of what values does your child get to learn, etc. So these are some of the keywords that you can sort of quote. This is screen time displacing shared family time, again called fubbing, which means that you are not sort of attentive to the person in front of you, rather the person on the screen. So these are some of the good keywords that can be mentioned when you mention the answer on this topic. So these are some of the erosions, disruptions, the negative sort of factors that you can mention. But while you're mentioning the negative role, you must also equally be mentioning about the positive role or the positive change with the coming of internet, which means that you can mention things like how video calls are today being able to sustain the joint family bonds across the distances. Families having to move because of in search of better job opportunities, nuclearization of families is happening. Even then, how are we able to maintain better family bond using video calls, etc., family WhatsApp group as modern virtual joint family, etc. So some more relatable examples, that the examiner will be able to tell that these are something more realistic rather than writing more theoretical or bookish points. That is one thing. Now, one more thing, because of having mentored some of the students in the past few days, I can tell that what you have to also take care of कि जब आप changing role mention कर रहे हो, when you're writing arguments for the changing role, you must show that transition, from grandparents being the primary giver of virtues to the transition towards the influencer being the third parent. That is what जो question का tone है of the transition, of the change which it is wanting to ask, that should get reflected when you're writing an answer as well. So that would be second advice that I would want to give, other than about the changing role of family के जो points that I wanted to give you. Along with that, you should also take care of the tone of the arguments that you're writing. That would be one thing. Another theme that can get repeated, and UPSC asks these kind of questions in ethics year after year. So you would find कि in some of the questions, and I'll also show you some of these questions, there's sort of a debate ongoing, one versus the other, जहाँ पे UPSC would want you to contest, let us say, values like objectivity versus compassion, law versus ethics, conscience is ethical or unethical. So things like these, जैसे some of these topics, conscience versus laws, right to do versus right thing to do, strength of a society is not in the laws but morality of its people. Ye question, this has been said by Swami Vivekananda, that strength of a society is not in the laws but the morality of its people. Then the last question, In law, a man is guilty when he violates the rights of others. In ethics, he is guilty only if he thinks of doing so. So there is this sort of a contrast between two topics that UPSC is deriving in some of these questions. Now, when you see these kind of questions, what should be your general approach to be able to give a good answer? I believe that because you're writing mains this year, you must have prepared the basic points. They say the strength of a society. The strength of a society is not in its laws, but the morality of its people. Now, when I write this question, firstly, you should spend, if there are 2 pages, you should spend 2/3 of this space saying that yes, the strength of a society are indeed in the morality of the people or how ethical the people are. It is true, you can go on to give examples of ethical individuals, ethical societies, the Japanese societies, the Scandinavian societies, and so on and so forth. But towards the very end, it is important that you end the way forward on a very balancing note. See, even when we agree that morality is, or ethics in general is what is sort of carrying the whole society together, you cannot deny that in a real world where there are actual humans, good and bad both, you cannot only sustain a society on the basis of just morality. Hypothetically, if the entire society was also moral, if the entire society was also ethical, we would still need laws. Why? Again, the features of laws, that laws bring uniformity, right? Laws create future deterrence, etc. So now again, there are certain ethical dilemmas that might emerge for ethical people as well. What is the law that is to be followed? Again, ethics is subjective. For one person, loyalty must be the prime virtue. For the other person, patriotism or honesty to the nation can be the right virtue. Now, which one do you go for, right? So for those scenarios, you have to be able to bring a balance that, however, at the same time, laws also have their own importance in a society, which is how you will be able to end the answer on a very positive, on a very fulfilled note, by talking about that even though it is morality of the people in the long term that we should strive for, that until a society is ethical, agar aap sirf laws ke basis pe koi society run kar rahe ho, it will collapse. We saw in COVID-19, you know how ambulances were charging 10,000, 15,000 per person for carrying, you know, a patient for like 1 kilometer away, etc. So this is what you have to pick up, that unless the laws exist, until the laws exist, at least a society will exist at a bare minimum level of ethics. That is what you have to discuss when it comes to this question. So the point being that whenever you have to contest between two values, should you focus on imbibing skills into someone, or should they be a person of integrity, one versus the other? Wherever you're discussing these values, always try to balance them both together. For example, I'm able to recall this question. Faith without strength is of no avail. Faith and strength both are required to accomplish any great task. Now, when you're discussing this question, there is automatically these 3 subparts that should emerge in this question. One is, what will happen when there is faith but not strength? What will happen when there's strength but not faith? And the third subpart, where you have to mention what will be the scenario when there's both faith and strength together. So this third subpart, लॉ एंड एथिक्स का एक वेन डायग्राम बना के एक कॉमन एरिया दिखाना, दैट फॉर अ गुड सोसाइटी और फॉर एन एथिकल सोसाइटी, laws and ethics both are important. In the short term, while the laws will create the bare minimum standards or establish the bare minimum ethics in society, in the longer term, it is the actual ethics, it is the ethical principles that will be able to survive a healthy society. So this is how we can go about it. So this is one way and one theme of questions that UPSC keeps on repeating. If it ever asks this again, in one of the questions, two of the questions, you should always try to end it on a very positive note, where you show the role or importance of both and how a balance is required between both to be able to establish a good society, right? Now coming to the next theme, then there is this topic of attitude in our syllabus. अब इस topic से we either get one direct question or we get one question in the form of a code based questions usually. Very small topic, very short topic. बहुत clearly you can use this topic in part A as well or in your case studies as well. Let us see some of the questions that UPSC has asked. The greatest discovery of my generation is that a human being can alter his life by altering his attitudes, right? Now read the second question. A man is but the product of his thoughts. What he thinks, he becomes. Third question. Watch your thoughts, they become words. Watch your words, they become actions. What your actions, they become habits. Habits becomes character and character becomes destiny, so on and so forth. Now when you look at these questions, they are actually from one single subpart of the topic of attitude, which is attitude and its influence and relation with thought and behavior. Practically, what is the question talking about? Attitude and its influence on thought and behavior. The greatest discovery of my generation is that a human being can alter the life by changing his attitude. Second question, a man is but a product of his thoughts. What he thinks, he becomes. So if you were there in class, I discussed this very important aspect of relation between thought and behavior, where we discuss this theme of how values turn into beliefs manifesting into attitude, and attitude manifesting into actual behavior. In simple terms, we talk about this in sense of manifestation of what you think you go on to become, but practically it is nothing but your cognition, the cognitive aspect of attitude driving the actual behavioral aspect of attitude, which UPSC has clearly asked कि attitude का relation or influence क्या है when it comes to thought and behavior. So this is how you have to sort of showcase this understanding of the syllabus by writing these things. One very important thing that will help you to deal with code-based questions in a more nuanced manner is trying to link it with which syllabus subpart is it related to. Just say there was this one question I can recall in one of the previous years. We are not thinking beings who feel, we are feeling beings who think. Now some of you may have attempted this question thinking that it is a random question out of nowhere. UPSC has asked this, but the moment you are able to realize that this is related to some of the components, one or two components of emotional intelligence itself, self awareness, self regulation से अगर आप इस question को link करके लिखते, you automatically would have been able to derive more subparts, more keywords जो आपने already शायद अपने notes में prepare कर रखा होगा. Emotional intelligence, it is all about basically fitting 60-70% of the examples, the content that you've prepared as a syllabus of emotional intelligence in these questions, right? So my point here being कि एक बार theme repeat हो रही है when it comes to attitude as well. There are two ways. या तो they will ask you role of positive attitude in a civil servant. Then there was this question on democratic versus bureaucratic attitude. Another theme which I believe is more creative, जहाँ से आपको questions अगर आ रहे हैं तो you should be able to attempt it in this similar manner. Now I won't go into the explanation of how values culminate into beliefs and beliefs become your attitude and attitude shapes behavior. That you can Google or go onto in depth. If you were there in class, you must have I think you have a clear understanding of what this is. But in general, in questions like these, you should try to establish a clear flowchart or a diagram where you sort of showcase how values actually manifest into your beliefs, how it shapes the belief system into how the belief system manifests into attitude, and how that attitude will finally go on to decide your behavior. आप इसको और if you want to attempt in the components of attitude as well, the cognitive, affective, and behavioral model of components of attitude. That is also what you can do. But I believe that this would be better if you attempt it like this. So one clue to get closer to how a question or a code-based question is being asked in the UPSC paper is to try to observe or think कि सिलेबस के कौन से टॉपिक्स, एंड अगेन देर आर नॉट मेनी टॉपिक्स, जैसे 5-6 टॉपिक्स हैं हमारे पास, other than the case studies there are some 6 topics. So if you prepare them well, I think you will be much closer to the demand of the question rather than writing a lot of random content, right? So this is what you can try to do. So another theme becomes from attitude, it is your influence and relation with thought and behavior wala subpart. Another thing, what I discussed when it comes to the context of civil servant is how it is asked in terms of what is the positive attitude for a civil servant, या democratic or bureaucratic attitude with respect to a civil servant. Now, having seen some of you write this answer in the class and in some of the tests itself, positive attitude वाला जो question है, now it is a very passive, theoretical, static question. But what I've seen most of you do is you will always start a point with a positive attitude leads to this, a positive attitude in a civil servant leads to this. Instead of writing 5 points talking just about positive attitude, why don't you think in 2 aspects when it comes to positive attitude? Jैसे, for example, positive attitude in a civil servant. Now break down that positive attitude into different values. एक positive attitude is a very generic keyword. Tolerant attitude is also positive, right? An attitude or an appetite for innovation is also positive attitude. Compassion, empathy, all these values are nothing but a particle or a part of your positive attitude. So when you're writing a question like this, you should always try to sort of bring more keywords, ethical vocabulary into your answer when you're writing one. And again, after writing these things, अब आपने अगर आपके अच्छा सा content prepare हो रखा है, if you have examples for all these keywords, compassion, empathy, which I think is a must, at least some civil servant examples as per all the key values that are there in your syllabus, some 30-35 keywords must be there with you. ठीक है, तो when you have them, you will automatically be able to recall the examples also that you would have already prepared for each of those civil servant related examples, right? So this is how you can go on to attempt such a question, right? This was it for the attitude कि 2 तरीके से पूछा जा सकता है attitude and how does this actually shape behavior of a person. The second way that this question can get asked is about role of positive attitude and a good attitude, democratic attitude for a civil servant. Now when you're answering a democratic attitude or a positive attitude, try to mention different values that define positive attitude instead of repeating the same keyword again and again, right? So use good values as fillers in some questions like these. Now other than that, what can get asked and has been asked in the previous years as well are your applied ethics themes. अब applied ethics में I'd want to touch upon some of the key themes that are most probable for this year as well. एक तो are regular social media ethics, can get asked and will get asked this year as well, most probably. So what you should do is prepare some ethical dilemmas and ethical issues when it comes to social media. Second theme that can get asked again this year is about AI ethics, issue of deep fakes, etc. One very important theme that hasn't been asked before this a lot, which can get asked this year, is about bioethics. Now for bioethics, reason being the Harish Rana passive euthanasia case that got prominent some time back. So uske around they can ask you what are some of the tenets. So you should be aware of the tenets of bioethics in general. Just autonomy, there is non-malfeasance, etc. So there are some 4-5 keywords that you must be prepared for. So that is one way that this can be asked. The fourth very important topic is your IR ethics. Now, having some ethical issues and ethical dilemmas on questions on topics like this is very important. Reason being that on a question on social media, you cannot be answering in simple keywords like transparency, accountability, integrity, etc. You need to have some ethical issues prepared for it. Echo chambers, algorithmic amplification of a of obscene content, etc. So basically, things like that have to be there. So specific keywords for each of these applied ethics themes. One more theme that is very commonly asked almost always in case studies or in part A is the environment versus development theme, right? So you must prepare well this theme as well. अब जब आप IR ethics पढ़ रहे हो, think of what is the most probable topic that can get asked. जैसे social media ethics में what can get asked is role of persuasion and social influence and how that is being sort of misused by the influencers of this generation to sort of promote certain consumerism, promote insecurity into the generation of today. Right now, when you're writing this answer, your examples also have to be a lot more current oriented. You say you cannot write some celebrities pan tobacco promotion examples because they are old. What you have to rather think of is, let us say, promotion of things like Ozempic, normalization of basically getting fillers, etc., and all these surgeries to just enhance one's beauty, etc. So these are some of the things that you can talk in the context of, because they are more current, because they are more recent, because they are driven by more recent events, they will get more marks naturally. Okay. Third is the IT Amendment Act that has come. So now with it came the dilemma of privacy versus control. तो एक ये factor है जो आपसे पूछा जा सकता है. Similarly, when you're preparing on IR ethics, now what probably can get asked or is getting asked year after year in IR ethics is कि, for example, last year it was the Russia Ukraine conflict के context में question. Then it was ethics in IR or role of aid, international aid in IR per question. Now what can get asked this year can be this question. West Asia में whatever conflict is going on, you can be asked that how much is it justified for a third country to sort of indulge into a internal conflict of another region out of in the name of promoting human rights or in the name of promoting democracy, in the name of promoting order, stability. So that can be the context of this question. अब जैसे आपको ये question पूछा जाता है, you should not in general write points like you would write in IR. Rather try to sort of analyze this theme in the context of just war ethics. कि जो current conflict है, the Iran, Israel and the US war that is going on, you have to sort of analyze this West Asia conflict in the perspective keeping in mind the just war theory or the just war principles. Now I won't discuss in detail here, but say for example, there are certain principles that just war ethics discusses. One is just in bello, just ad bellum and just in bello. Which is things that you must keep in mind before entering the war, and what are the things that you must keep in mind once you have entered war. So first thing is that there should be a legitimate authority that sort of announces war or is announcing war. First is that. Second thing that can get asked is about just cause, or the cause must be proportionate. Or the violence or the war that you're going for should be proportionate to the cause that you're trying to justify. So now, fighting a war for economic resources like oil, is it justified? Is it a justified concern? So you have to analyze all these points with the perspective of the West Asian crisis. This is what is expected of you when you're writing an answer in IR ethics. Okay? So these are some of the topics. I think I've touched upon some of the topics well. Prepare them well so that when you're writing an answer, you don't have to stop your pen and think of some keywords. They should be on your tips, right? In the classes, we have dealt with them in the value addition sessions in detail. If you are not a part of the classes as well, what you can do is prepare some ethical issues and dilemmas for all these themes of IR ethics, environment versus this development concern in general, AI ethics, etc. I think that would be it. If you prepare these themes well, uh, I think you'll be able to do good when it comes to the ethics paper. So all the very best, and I hope that you come out with flying colors. Thank you.